I'm Renee, host of Roots of Faith. Today I'm standing in the choir loft of the beautiful St. Anne Catholic Church in Napoleonville, Louisiana. This is one of the many parishes that our diocese has along Bayou Lafourche, and we'll be exploring what's happening today in the world of St. Anne, along with my guest, Father Joseph Vu. The history of this parish, though, goes back to the original parish of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary on Bayou Lafourche in Platonville, which was the mother church. This region was settled by the descendants of the Canary Islanders and the Acadians, and as they grew into this area, they wanted their own church, petitioned the bishops, and it was actually the third Archbishop of New Orleans, who was Napoleon Parishes, that granted them their wish. So although the town is named Napoleonville, they named the church St. Napoleon in honor of him. And in 1909, when this beautiful church was built, they renamed it St. Anne because of the devotion here to the Blessed Mother's mother, St. Anne. So join us as we learn more about this parish. We are here at St. Anne in Napoleonville, this wonderful community, dear and dear to my heart. My roots are here. So my parents were baptized here, married here, and my grandparents, I can keep on going back from when this parish began. But we're here to talk about the here and now and what you're doing here. So how long have you been here?
So technically this will be my, well, on paper, it'll be 2 years as of July 1st. But I've been here a little bit more than 2 years because I had covered for the previous pastor here for a couple of months before I came. So the people here have been knowing me for about 2.5 years now.
So you've had your feet wet here.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, other assignments perhaps.
So when I'm around this area and celebrating Mass for the very first time, the very first question, you find this out much later, but the very first question people think to themselves is, can we understand him? You know, he's obviously Asian. Can we understand what he's trying to say? You know, and the answer is, well, yes. Once they hear me speak, you know, they know, oh wait, he can speak English. So where are you from? Well, my family originally is from Vietnam. So mom and dad immigrated here to the United States, and I was born in Baton Rouge. So I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, went to school in Baton Rouge. And when I became a seminarian, the previous bishop, Bishop Munch, had sent me out to Covington for school. And so I did 4 years at St. Joseph Seminary College, and then after graduation, I had moved to Notre Dame in New Orleans and did 4 years of theology there. So yeah, after becoming a priest, we have been shifting assignments around, and so I ended up here.
So that's a big step because this parish, St. Anne's, is clustered. It's what we call one of our clusters, which we've talked about in previous shows as well, where you're the pastor for separate parishes. They're not one parish. They're all separate parishes, but clustered together under one pastor. And so this was, back in the 80s under Bishop Alfred Hughes, one of the first well, actually the first cluster was here, and the Church of the Assumption right up the bayou about 6 miles. Yeah. But now, you have been given even a third parish. Did you enter in with the third, with St. Philomena being part of the cluster? I did. It was done prior to you coming here? Right,
so it was clustered under Father Paul Gross.
Okay.
So I do have 3 parishes, Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Platonville, St. Anne here in Napoleonville, and also St. Philomena in Labadeville. And there's also a parish, which is now a chapel, Immaculate Conception Chapel down the Canal Road.
Right, I believe they say Mass there just once or twice a year.
We have Mass there twice a year, one for All Saints, and the other one is for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th. Okay. So, you know, being a pastor of all 3 parishes, it's I don't know, like it sounds like it's a lot, but I've been very blessed, literally to have 3 parishes. People tell me all the time, like, how can you handle 3 parishes? Well, the only reason I can handle 3 parishes is with the assistance of not only the staff, but also our parishioners. And I say I'm very blessed because, you know, I'm thinking back to myself, just sitting back and reflecting in prayer sometimes, how many people I have gotten to know because of those 3 parishes. Because I share with a few of our parishioners that, had I only have St. Philomena or only have St. Anne or only Assumption, I really only get to know the people in just that area. But because with these parishes, and it extends a good distance, I've gotten even as far as getting to know people in Thibodaux, and as far as, here, people in Belrose and Pankerville. And before I got here, I actually was a transplant from Donaldsonville.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay,
the
so very
people
close.
there, right, the people there all know me from when I was there. And so like
You've got a name all the way down Bayou Lafourche.
right. So it's really it's a blessing to have gotten to know all of these very faithful people up and down the bayou.
Yes. For those of you who are not familiar with this area, Bayou Lafourche runs from Donaldsonville, where at one time it was connected to the Mississippi River, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Our diocese extends roughly 23 miles, 25 miles in that ballpark between Donaldsonville and the other side of Labadeville, which is where St. Philomena is. So not counting the church in Donaldsonville, which faces the river, but just the churches along Bayou Lafourche, you're looking at roughly about 17 or 18 miles with 5 churches. So you cover a distance.
There's actually more.
There's more, well, there are more.
So
you're
you
right.
have, you
so
have
you've
St.
got
Benedict.
St. Benedict the Moor, and you've got St. Augustine
Those
Chapel.
are not
You're
my
right.
parishes.
You're right.
So another priest takes care of those
A couple of priests.
2 parishes.
Several priests. 'Cause
There's
St.
2,
Benedict,
right.
St. Benedict, St. Augustine are under one priest.
That's
and
right.
Then St. Jules and St. Elizabeth.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, but, see, you're so correct. But along this stretch, for those who don't know, to try to envision it, it's a linear thing.
Right. Right. Yes. Literally, like there is no shortage of Catholic churches.
Beautiful.
I sat down
Catholic
and I did the
churches,
math for that one day, just geography. About every 2 miles, you run into another church. Yeah,
You're
so
right.
just about 2 miles, you run into another church in this area down the bayou.
So that's just giving you a little background, and we haven't even started talking about St. Anne yet, have we?
Yeah.
So about how many people, or you probably know, what is the population here, your parishioners here at St. Anne?
Our parishioner, at least the ones who are registered, we have right around 540 families at just St. Anne Parish.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. When I was looking at the statistics, actually, from the last reunion, 100-year reunion of y'all, when Father Burns was here, there were 400 families.
Right.
So for an area that's as rural as this is, and you think of it as not growing, that's actually a nice cushion to see, as opposed to where I didn't know what to perceive. Because being agriculture, a lot of people, have been leaving. Maybe they're coming back now. You would know.
Right. Every once now and then actually, we still have people moving in. There are houses being built all the time for young families.
I know, I'm trying to buy a lot here.
And then, really? Wow.
I'll tell you about that after the show.
Sure thing. But the people, like the young families who are here, many of them are obviously in agriculture, but then we have a majority of them who are teachers, and the men, they work in plants. And so, we're used to driving all over the place. So the men here, most of them also work in plants, either in Thibodaux or out in the Geismar, or just all over the place, really. Yeah, so in a way, like it is an expanding parish. Not as much as the
but that's
the
exciting.
mainstream city, but for
That's
me, it
exciting,
is
yes.
exciting to have people coming in.
Getting back to St. Anne, which is what we're here for, part of what defines the parish is the ministries that are involved, and that what makes the people different, the parish different. Tell us a little bit about some of the ministries that you have, or ministries here
Right.
in St. Anne.
So a number of the ministries that we have around here, I'm thinking of here the KC's, Ladies Altar Society, Homebound Ministry, where ministers bring communion and the Lord to those who can't come to Mass. But also I've heard from a number of people, I haven't seen this in quite a whole lot of parishes, are the, for example, like bereavement committee, where, when you have a family member who recently just had a loss, in their family, and amidst of all the plannings and stuff, our parishioners are reaching out to them just simply to cook, a dish and bring it to over the hall and say, hey, look, we know that you're going through a difficult time right now. There's not a whole lot we can do other than prayer, but here's something that we cooked, and we want to help you out with the reception, because the reception, I mean, it seems to be like one of the last things people think about, right? Because you're going through things with funeral homes and all the stuff in between,
Yeah.
just for your loved one. And you also want to make the receptions special for people to show gratitude to the people who come. And so I find that our bereavement committee here they've been working hard in order to extend their hands out to the people in our community who are just going through a difficult time.
And that's something too that you see along the bayou, because people here like to cook. So
Yeah, oh
that's-
yes, oh yes.
That's, that may not be a hardship for them.
I had a seminarian over this past summer, and let's just say he said he put on some weight.
That happens here.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have a ministry in particular you were telling me about. This parish does not have a school
That's
per
right.
se. The nearest school, at one time there was one at St. Philomena and it closed several years ago. And St. Elizabeth is still flanking on your northern side.
Yes.
But not under your jurisdiction as far as Catholic schools go. But you have a special ministry in this whole area, as you were saying, up and down the bayou. Tell us a little bit about that and how it came to be.
So a couple of years ago, I was assigned to Ascension Catholic in St. Francis in Donaldsonville, and they have a school over there. It's the oldest school
Right.
in the diocese of Baton Rouge, and I've always been very nervous about visiting schools, especially like individual classrooms. What do you talk about to the kids? And I remember Father Paul Yee was out on a particular mission trip, and he said, "Hey, can you take the bishop? The bishop's coming to visit with the kids. Can you take him and to go visit the schools?" I'm like, maybe. Yeah, I'll do it. I don't know what to do, but here I'm just accompanying the bishop. So after Mass, I walked him to the individual classrooms, and just seeing how he was present there to the students. He told knock-knock jokes, and then at the end of his visit, he gave them a blessing. And so the teachers, right after his visit, told me, "Father, we would love to have you come back and just go visit the classrooms." And so now I take it from Bishop Munch just to see how he visits with the classrooms. And I was thinking back in my mind, wow, this is not too hard. I can do this. And so I emulated the same thing that he would do. So every classroom is accompanied with a short lesson, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. And when I told I was being assigned to St. Anne, there was a part of me that was excited to become a pastor, but there was also a part of me that really yearned to have a school attached to it. And we didn't have a school attached. And so a lot of our parishioners have students at St. Elizabeth School in Painkerville, but also we have a handful of students who are at St. Genevieve in Thibodaux, the opposite end of the parish of the diocese.
Actually, yeah.
So I started visiting those two schools, and like I mentioned to you before, we have teachers who are parishioners at our parish. And just over a period of time, they've invited me to come into the schools, and actually a number of our principals are also parishioners. And what a blessing it is for me to be able to be welcomed into even the public schools now.
That's the difference.
so,
is the ministry, even in the
yes.
public schools, that makes a difference.
That's right. So, for me, I really enjoy spending time with, not only the students, but also the teachers. And so I've been visiting, a number of, pretty much all of the schools, the public schools up and down the bayou here. And so as of this year, I also picked up Assumption High.
Oh,
And
great.
so, it seems like it's a lot, but if I divide it over a period of 2 weeks, easily cover all the schools. And I've always wanted to be a teacher inside of a classroom too. That's where I really come alive. And I find this kind of ministry for me it's working really well because really when you see the parishioners, for an hour on Sunday, really I'm celebrating Mass.
Right.
And after Mass, I say hey with them for literally a few seconds and then go home. And so by doing this, I'm also reaching out to our community in a way that is interactive.
And the younger generation.
Right.
That's so important to see this.
And so, speaking of which, this morning I was in school uniform, public school uniform. I had a backpack. It was a superhero backpack. I had my name tag on. It said on there, Father Joe, bus tag, pre-K student. And so you go into the classroom, the kids really enjoy it.
They get a kick out of that, I
They do
bet.
get a kick out of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just a story that I heard, I was with Father Charlie Landry last week, and of course my parents having come here, talking about being at Assumption High. This region back in the 1940s and 50s, especially, that's when my parents were in high school in the 50s, was so Catholic that they didn't come for religious ed at the church. That was incorporated. That was at the high school, because everybody at the high school at that point in time pretty much was Catholic. And I mean, it was the only high school in all of Assumption Parish. So you were covered from Pierre Port down, St. Philomena and Bayou Lewis, all around. So you're saying this brings back memories of what they've told me in the past about how it was way back. So that's an awesome tradition to bring back, even though it's not CCD class. Your presence, to these kids, whether it's public school, Catholic school, whatever, says a lot for the example set for here.
Yeah, so when I do the classroom visits, I visit every classroom of all the schools. And obviously at a public school, we can't initiate the prayers.
Right.
But what I do is I talk about virtues, and it's things that not only a Catholic, but any human being should work on. So I find that to be a big blessing for me here, where we have no school, but our parishioners are in the school systems, and they have very graciously invited me to be at their schools. So that is one ministry that is close and dear to my heart.
That's great. This physical structure that we're in, this church, is amazing. It's, to me, one of the prettiest. Of course, I'm partial, but it's one of the most beautiful in our diocese. This building that we're standing in was built in 1909. This is the second church for this parish. And when it was built, over the years, it's had, just to maintain it and keep it going, it's had many renovations throughout the years. Some of the things, though, that you might want to pay attention to that are really beautiful if you ever visit here, the stained glass windows are absolutely beautiful. We do know, or we're pretty sure that they're attributed to the Emerald Fry studio. But there are many more than 15, but there are 15 here that depict the mysteries of the Rosary.
That's right. That was one of the first things I noticed when I got here, was looking at the stained glass window. No one told me, but just looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute.
You catch it.
Okay, there's 15 stained glass windows, and they all depict a certain mysteries of the Rosary. So there are 15 stained glass windows in here, and they depict the joyful, the glorious, and the sorrowful mysteries of the Holy Rosary. And I think that's one of the features that really stand out here in this church, is that because back then, I would imagine people, weren't highly educated. The stained glass window, as I was taught, was always a little picture catechism to teach people about the mysteries of the faith. So, as a matter of fact, even till today, I would ask some of the kids, hey, what is that a picture of? And they'll start naming out things, and eventually we'll get there to the catechism part of what it really means. And so it's a visual way of talking about things to people. As a matter of fact, in homilies, a lot of times I would incorporate that into the substance of the homily to teach people on a particular Sunday what some of these stained glass windows mean. Because I would imagine for people who grew up here and they walk through this church every Sunday, it's something that you kind of miss. It just becomes, it's St. Anne Church. And so when someone else points out a key feature in that church, you're more apt to go, I've never noticed that before.
Right.
And so along with that too, there's one thing that's very special to me is actually right in the sanctuary, where you have St. Anne, the Blessed Mother, and then her husband on the other end, on the other side, which is St. Joachim. And so that, to me, I spend most of my time up in the sanctuary. And so these are the things that really, they stand out to me. So it's not often rather, that I get to sit in the congregation to get their perspective. But when I do, I appreciate some of those features of our church that otherwise wouldn't really stand out when I'm sitting up in the sanctuary.
Oh, your perspective is awesome, because we don't think of that. There is a statue of St. Anne in the back of church, and I know just from my parents and my family growing up in this area that This church was named after her. She's the patron saint for this area. And the reason for that is there has always been a long-standing tradition to the novena to St. Anne every July here. And I'm presuming they still do that
Yes, ma'am.
here because it's been done here. I've heard about it my whole life. But the statue of her is beautiful, and it's a key point of this because this church was not always named that. But because of the devotion in 1909, it was renamed after her. And so I think that's why probably the prominence of her and her husband in the sanctuary
you
too
find
is so amazing.
pictures of St. Anne just all throughout the church here.
Well, my mother was born on her feast day, and that's how she has the name Anne.
Ah, gotcha.
Her name is Anne because of that. Her birthday is July 26th, so I will always know St. Anne's feast day. I know that a church of this caliber constantly has things that you have to address, issues to address, and over the years they've done many different renovations or improvements to it. Tell us a little bit about what you have done or what you propose, things that you see may need to be done, whatever applies to what's here and now at St. Anne's.
Yes, ma'am. So with an old church like this, one of the things that is constant is like maintenance. And I think every pastor who has been here have always had his hands in some sort of renovation. And especially for a church this old, we do want to keep it around for as long as we can possibly can. So when I got here, one of the things that the previous pastor told me that was a dire need was a sound system. And the parishioners often would say, "Father, I can't hear you." And so, like, if you come to Mass and you can't hear the Word of God being read, you can't hear the priest teaching the Word of God, I mean, receiving the Eucharist is incredibly important.
Right.
But we also needed to be
picture.
activated intellectually. And so what I did was, I just so happened to have a decent background in audio.
Oh, wow.
And so I got my brother, who is also a priest, Father John. He is also really into audio. And so I got him to do some CAD designs of speakers. And so we prototyped a couple of the speakers that you see in the church right now. And finally, when we got the sample that we wanted, I had called in parishioners who ran the wires. So they went up to, actually, no, they didn't go up top. They went underneath the church. So they crawled underneath this church to run all of the wires back up to the choir loft where our main sound system is at. And as they did all that, I had also a group of men from our cluster parishes to build the boxes, the cabinets for the speakers. And also I had a group of ladies who helped me sit and wire all of the speakers.
So these are hand-built?
These are hand-built,
Oh, my
yes.
goodness.
They're handmade.
Amazing.
The guys also painted it. And after we were finished with all that, one of the seminarians came over and helped me wire it all up. And so, and then after that, speaking of which, because I can't do the tuning and be down here and talk at the same time, we have a couple of musicians in the parish here who came by and helped me tune this, the rest of the sound system. And so over a period of time, I literally have not heard anyone complain about, "Father, I can't hear you anymore." So it's worked out really well with the cooperation of our parishioners.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, to talk a little bit, not to leave the church, is there anything else about the church in particular?
Not that I can think of
So
right
your
now.
needs are being met now as far as
not
basic
that I-
maintenance on an old historic church.
Yeah, not that I can
Old and
think of.
beautiful. It's on the historic registry, but you have a nice campus too. The land here is in the center of town.
That's right.
Beautifully located in the center of town, but there are several buildings. The Monsignor Landsman is where
Monsignor
your parish
Landsman.
office
That's
is.
right.
It's a building behind your rectory. Do you live
That's
in
right.
this rectory?
So I have two rectories, and
Yes.
I live in both rectories.
both. Okay.
When I got here, a lot of the amenities was already here, and so I had told some of the parishioners that I was going to stay here, and which by that point, St. Philomena was already clustered, and I could hear it in their voice that they were sad that their pastor wasn't going to live at their rectory over there. So eventually, I made adjustments to live at both rectories.
Great.
So I spend half of the week here and half of the week over there, St. Philomena, and it's worked out really well because really it affords me less driving.
Right.
Because when I have meetings over there, I stay over there. When I have stuff over here, I stay over here. And because of that, I also end up extending myself to the further boundaries of the parish. So Belrose, Pankerville in one direction, and then Thibodaux in the other direction. So it's really worked out well. And since we're talking about the rectory used to be the office also.
I remember that.
But I can't remember, I think it was Father Vic Messina, who got here, and he built the Landsman Center in order for the kids to have a place to go to PSR.
Okay.
And so eventually we shifted all of the office staff from the rectory over to the center here. And the only other structure that we have here on campus would be St. Anne Hall. So that's kind of like our activity center. Well, it is, not kind of, it is our activity center for various needs.
And it's a good size as well. You do have a cemetery.
We do have a
beautiful,
cemetery. It's a
large cemetery.
ginormous cemetery, in my opinion. Like, it's huge.
And it began in 1874 when the parish began, correct? Probably related to half the
yes,
tombs
ma'am.
there. But it is beautiful, and I know my parents, even in Baton Rouge, I'm responsible for making sure all of those tombs have flowers for when y'all
Yeah.
do all the events that occur around All Saints and All Souls. So that is another aspect, though, because that is something, that people want to see. And y'all have, what, 2 mausoleums?
Ooh, I can't remember.
I think
2,
it's
3?
2 or 3 towards the back of the cemetery.
I'm even thinking it might be like 4 back there. Yeah.
So, but that's part of this as well.
Right.
And if you're driving down Bayou Lafourche at any point in time, if you're a Grand Isle person or heading down the bayou, the way that St. Anne sits, when you get to the center of town, right past the red light, if you look down the street, it faces all the way to the bayou. It makes a very beautiful, dramatic statement.
And speaking of the cemetery, one of the things that we do on an annual basis is the blessing of the cemetery. And the reason I say that's also a big blessing is because it brings people who have moved away back for that one Mass, not only to pray for their ancestors, but also to visit the parish. And I think that's a big blessing for all of us who are around here to be able to see people who were coming, they're coming back. Yeah.
We've been visiting here at St. Anne, and I want to ask you, is there something that comes to mind, or a phrase or a thought about what would characterize your congregation here? I don't want to put you on the spot, but...
Yeah, so if I could summarize our entire community in one word, it'll be loyal.
Loyal.
Because anything that we need from around this area, anything that I've needed, people have always showed up. And not what I've needed, but also what the Lord wants for people to come to Mass, to worship Him. And I think people have done a good job of being here, being loyal to that. And as a side note, things that I've wanted to change, people have always challenged me, don't change that, because they're loyal to that particular, either church tradition or parish tradition. And so I would characterize our community as loyal, the entire community.
Okay,
Yeah.
well that's awesome. Father Booth, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been wonderful to learn more and to again see beautiful St. Anne's. So
Sure
thank
thing.
you so much.
Thank you.